All right. Well, welcome everyone. It's so great to be here. I'm Amy Kalnoki, co-founder and COO of Bitwave. I'm really excited to talk to you today about something that I love talking about. It's the state of enterprise digital asset adoption. And actually, people don't believe me, but one of the reasons that we started Bitwave was to help enable enterprises to use digital assets because I truly believe it's inevitable that enterprises will be using blockchain technology and Web3 technology. They already are, as we'll get into. But again, I'm Amy Kalnoki, co-founder and COO of Bitwave, the leading digital asset finance platform. We help businesses do their accounting, bookkeeping, tax tracking, rev rec, you name it. Anything you need as an accountant or someone who works in finance or anyone who does with any kind of back office tasks, the software you need to get your job done. So, all right, I'm excited to talk to you today about the state of enterprise digital asset adoption. And I really think that this full run, I was just talking with Brandon, if we're in one, don't jinx it, will really be driven by real use cases and enterprise adoption. Let's dive in. So where are we right now? I think the moment that we're at for enterprise digital asset adoption is what people are kind of starting to call Web 2.5. There's an example, an old example from the dot-com era that companies used to bill themselves as internet companies. And even Amazon was originally called Amazon.com. And now, like, you would never say that. Every company is an internet company. And I don't think we're there yet for Web3. So people still qualify their company as being a Web3 company, and there are Web2 companies. But where we are is this transition phase. We're really, it's inevitable. Like I said, I really believe that enterprises will adopt Web3 and blockchain technology. And so we're in this transition phase, this bridge between Web2 world and Web3. So that's why we're calling it Web 2.5. I think mainstream adoption of digital assets and of Web3 technology will be pretty invisible to most end users. Companies will want to maintain the same level of user experience and user interface as they have right now and expand their Web 2 products into Web3 and augment it with blockchain technology, but it needs to be seamless. And we're not quite there yet. There's a lot of improvements people have made on wallets and things like that, but we're still not quite there yet. So that's why we're still in the Web 2.5. Things are being worked out. We're in that bridge, that gap between. I predict that millions of people this year will interact with Web3 in some way without even realizing it. So let's talk about some of the key trends driving enterprise digital asset adoption and what is really spurring businesses and enterprises to get into digital assets. So, of course, the latest biggest news, the ETFs, Bitcoin ETFs, it sparked mainstream adoption. They're going crazy right now. And this is all about access. Bitcoin ETFs actually account for 75% of new Bitcoin investments, which I think is crazy. Now, people who were previously uncomfortable or unable for some reason to invest directly into Bitcoin if they wanted to, can get exposure to digital assets through one of these exchange traded funds. And like $10 billion of new capital has entered into the Bitcoin markets, which is fantastic if you're a believer in crypto and digital assets. That's just this year since they launched. And I think, I mean, and it's partially why Bitcoin has rallied above, the 50K mark, because there's a strong correlation with bull runs, with investor activity and volume and trading volume and things like that. And I think that's because businesses go and enterprise go where people are. They go where consumers are. And so the more widespread adoption and use of things like the ETFs, the more it spurs enterprise adoption, the more businesses that will come up with wallets of their own or, somehow enabling digital assets. So definitely anytime we see mainstream movement, we see businesses following because businesses like to make money. So they have to go where the consumers are going. I will say one thing about the ETFs. Well, I do think they're very, very exciting. It is a little bit of a double-edged sword in a way. It goes against the original vision of crypto because it is a middleman. It's a layer of centralization. If you think about Satoshi's white paper, peer-to-peer electronic cash system, uh, it's not really having a big centralized financial institution, but I think in a way centralization is needed for enterprise adoption, probably most likely. Some layer of centralization and middlemen are inevitable. And I think the Bitcoin ETFs, like this quote here from Cointelegraph, really have helped to fortify institutional trust in crypto. And what's up next? It's likely ETH ETFs. Probably, in my opinion, the only other asset that the SEC will approve anytime soon for an ETF will be Ethereum. And I agree with CoinDesk that it could be the next institutional darling. A lot of the big players who have Bitcoin ETFs have already filed for ETH ETFs as well. So keep an eye out for that. Next, the next thing driving enterprise adoption of crypto and digital assets, I think, are L2s that are focused on serving the use cases and needs of enterprises. So I wanted to call out one, Hedera. I think that they've done a great job and are probably the best example of enterprise adoption. Hedera is, of course, a widely used, sustainable, enterprise-grade public network. And the council members that they have, the companies that are part of their governing council, I think just speaks to itself. You have folks like, if you look here on this graphic, IBM, Google, LG, Tata, ServiceNow. I mean, these are traditional big companies, like as enterprise as you can get. And even Hitachi recently joined the Hedera Council, focused on bringing kind of industrial and supply chain uses to the blockchain. And I think that's key. It's a very use case based blockchain. It really, they spent a lot of time and energy thinking about and developing enterprise use cases. And ultimately, that's what matters. Technology is great, but if no one's using it, it doesn't really matter. And so when you see someone like Hedera that it is really focused on and catering to enterprise use cases, I think it's really great. And I mean, I love them. They're a Bitwave partner and customer, and they do a huge transaction volume. I'll get into transaction volumes a little bit later when we go into L2s. But it's just great to see someone who's developing an enterprise ecosystem. And another enterprise-focused L1, again, that's very use case based. I think that like the bull run is really going to be on these solid enterprise use cases. Is Providence, probably less used than Hedera, a little more nascent, but they build themselves as really being purpose-built for regulated industries like fintechs and banks, and having someone that is really, again, very use case focused, key to driving enterprise adoption, especially for these L1s. So L2s, like I mentioned, it's been great to see L2s really take off because they do solve a real issue for a lot of enterprises. I mean, I think this next bull run, we'll see transaction volumes just go through the roof. So scale and handling scale is super important. And so some of these L2 scaling solutions have really solved one of the biggest challenges that enterprises face when they get into digital assets and really start transacting on the blockchain. It's all about volume. And Arbitrum and Optimism here are great examples of two of the leading L2s. They make up for about 70% of TVL on L2s. So it's great to see someone focused on infrastructure and scaling, because scale and transaction volume is a huge issue for businesses. I think another thing that L2s solve that enterprises really care about is privacy. So you have like ZKs and things like that, because perhaps enterprises won't want to publish everything as publicly. And that's actually something that I think that Provenance that I mentioned on my previous slide does well, is understanding that there is likely for some of these enterprises going to need to be a hybrid or a blend between public and private blockchains, and keeping privacy top of mind. So L2s are definitely helping to drive enterprise adoption of digital assets. All right, NFTs. Gosh, the killer enterprise use case for NFTs, I think, is marketing activations. It's the perfect use case for brands. Brands want to attract new customers, maybe increase customer retention, or provide these kind of rich, modern, cool experiences. And NFTs just work so well for that. I think NFT loyalty programs or like reward programs or ticketing are other really great use cases for enterprises, and we've seen enterprises start to adopt these. Um, but it's important to note, they don't want to compromise, like I said, on that user experience. They want that seamless integration and that's a why we're still in that Web 2.5. I think for a lot of them, they have rolled out and people haven't even maybe noticed that it is an NFT or don't even know it's an NFT. In fact, some companies have started calling it digital collectibles and moving away from the term NFT, which I think is actually, I like the term digital collectible. I think it's a little bit broader, more encompassing of the different types of NFTs. I think NFTs, people think a little bit just too much about art, and maybe aren't thinking about something like what Budweiser did here, where it was had a in-person and physical products tied to their digital collectible, or Starbucks, who had an NFT collection that offered, exclusive coffee experiences, or GQ as an example that did something based on subscription magazine holders. And so bringing in the real world and live in-person type things and then plus a digital collectible, I think it's a better term. But here are a couple great examples of large enterprises that are adopting NFTs. And kind of how are they doing it? One way they're doing it is Salesforce. Actually, it's still a bit nascent, but they launched last year their Salesforce NFT cloud. I mean, so many businesses use Salesforce. And so it's interesting that they built that into their marketing cloud platform. But what's really interesting is how they talk about it and position it on their own website. What I was calling out at the beginning of, like, we really need this seamless experience between Web 2 and Web 3 channels. That is like how they position what Salesforce can do for them. And even the quote they highlight on their website from the CTO of Mattel that says, really bringing together the channels just speaks to how people want to interact with Web 3 and make it kind of invisible and blend it with Web 2. So again, in that kind of 2.5 transition phase of enterprise digital asset adoption. So I think the next thing that's driving enterprise adoption, or potentially has the potential to help drive enterprise adoption, is RWAs, real world assets. Again, this is a 2.5 kind of transition thing too, because it's about bringing physical and traditional financial assets onto the blockchain. So that really being that bridge there. And in case people don't know, an RWA is a tangible or physical asset like art or real estate or a commodity or shares or something that you tokenize and represent on the blockchain. It's still nascent too, as well, still growing. I think people talk a lot about it because it is really exciting, and I think everyone agrees that we do need a way to represent things like that on the blockchain, like physical and financial assets on the blockchain. But it's not as huge, I think, as some people expect it to be. You can see that the consulting group expects it to really grow and take off, and I tend to agree. One of the great use cases of RWAs to help kind of bring to collateralize and bring more assets to DeFi, which of course love DeFi. And so it's good to see something that helps kind of bolster and bring traditional finance and traditional assets onto the blockchain and to be tokenized and used as collateral for DeFi is an exciting use case, and something that I think will help businesses as well, because I think it can open up kind of global trade. It can help kind of generate yield for folks off of physical assets. I think there's a lot of potential for enterprise adoption and just furthering use of DeFi and things like that. All right. So payments, great. I love talking about payments. Stablecoin payments for me are the tip of the spear for enterprise adoption. Really, it's all about payments. and stablecoins. I think this is just such a solid use case for businesses using digital assets. And it's really great to see what's been happening lately. Folks like SAP, PayPal, Visa are all adopting stablecoins and blockchain rails as alternative settlement methods. Visa expanded their stablecoin settlement to Solana last year. USDC, of course, Coinbase and Circle have done great things with USDC. That's actually expanded to other blockchains as well. So it's fantastic to see that stablecoin rails have really brought stability and cost saving and speed to enterprise payments. I mean, it's just a killer use case to be able to do like instant cross-border settlements. Bitwave, of course, supports invoicing and digital asset payments and B2B reconciliation back into your ERP if you're doing any sort of crypto payments. So happy to follow up with you about that after. But it's really just exciting to see that stable coins can help spur digital asset adoption for enterprises. I mean, I just think it makes so much sense to do all of your accounts payable with stablecoins and smart contracts, and we're definitely moving in that direction. PayPal, of course, launched PiUSDC last year. PiUSD, and I think it's been successful so far, and it's fantastic to see again a really big traditional enterprise, certainly someone that's well respected in the space, a heavyweight, if you will, kind of throwing their weight behind something like a stable coin. I think it's super exciting to see. So definitely keep your eye on that. There's one other thing too to keep your eye on is yield-bearing stable coins. I think that there's still a little bit of legality to be figured out there. But basically what a yield-bearing stablecoin would be, a coin and money that you control, but you could add it into a smart contract for future payments, and both you and the person who you're paying could get some yield off of that. But maybe that's a security. So I think people will still have to figure that one out. And there's actually a new one I heard about recently, which is flat coins. Which is a new concept to kind of get stablecoins more pegged to buying power, so they're hedged against inflation. So a lot of stuff going on there. Definitely keep your eye out on payments, B2B payments, and stablecoins. All right. ETH2 staking. Oh, this is a great thing that happened last year that has really helped to drive enterprise adoption of digital assets. So in case someone's new, ETH went from a proof of work blockchain where you need power and electricity and effort to shore up the network to a proof of stake where you have economic incentives to shore up the network. And this was fantastic. And of course, it spurred on the explosion of ETH staking. And that's where, you know, people who believe in ETH and hold ETH and have ETH can stake it and get a yield on it. And in fact, you can be 3 to 5% APY. And switching from a proof of work to proof of stake helped drive adoption because, well, first of all, it's way greener. It's a lot more environmentally friendly and helped get past any sort of corporate sustainability boards or requirements that businesses maybe had that was preventing them getting into something like proof of work. So it's a lot greener. So you don't have to worry about that anymore. And so institutions and enterprises can participate in staking by running their own validator nodes. It's actually not that easy to run a validator node. We do it here, but we run a couple, and we know that it can be a lot of work. And so an option for folks is to do liquid staking. So it's a newer option where you can put up the money and someone else runs the node for you and takes a cut, but it's a perfect option for enterprises who want to earn a yield on the ETH that they hold, but perhaps don't have the expertise needed to run one of their own nodes. So liquid staking. All right. What is still needed for enterprise digital asset adoption? And I think the answer is clarity on regulations. So I have this slide like crypto regulations are here, question mark, key on the question mark. I mean, I think it's clear every Fortune 500 company is exploring blockchain technology in some way. That's a quote from Deloitte, our friends at Deloitte. It's true. I mean, the digital asset ecosystem continues to grow and evolve and mature. And alongside of that comes additional scrutiny from regulators, which is a good thing, right? Regulators, in theory, are seeking to ensure what I put here. Yeah, transparency, accountability, and compliance with existing laws. And enterprises need that. They need regulations. They need clarity on the regulations because corporate board members and CEOs don't want to get sued. They don't want to go to jail. They don't want to do something wrong. But it can often feel like the regulations that we have are inconsistently applied or still confusing or still a gray area and no one wants to be the first. Though I think overall the SEC seems like maybe they're backing down a bit from some of the cases that they were litigating, but SEC is suing a lot of folks in the space. Coinbase was sued last year by the SEC for operating an unregistered exchange. The case is still pending. Coinbase, you can see from this quote, feels very confident about their ability to win. And there are two different ways that regulations get made and accepted. One is through case law. And so testing things in court is a very valid and normal process. And so seeing cases like Kraken, Binance, and Coinbase will help bring the clarity and the case law that is needed for us at the moment. And then the other way is by passing laws. So here's an overview of some of the recent kind of legislation that's in the works. And so it's either case law or we get laws passed by our Congress. There are a lot of great groups that spend a lot of time educating and lobbying Congress. The Coinbase runs one that is great. There are several. And so it's a really important part of enterprise adoption is getting that full clarity on what you can and cannot do and how existing laws apply to the new world that we're in of digital assets. All right, so how can you be successful as an enterprise when you're adopting digital assets? I think the number one thing I would advise is to be proactive. Accurate record keeping, and really, really not getting ahead of yourself and making sure you're fully understanding, especially if you're working on an accounting or finance team, is understanding the implications of everything that you're doing when you start transacting in digital asset. Keep good records, and certainly a platform like Bitwave is really, really helpful for that. All right. I think I have about 5 minutes left. I'll just dive a bit more in. Again, we're Bitwave, digital asset accounting, bookkeeping, tax tracking, RevRec software, the leading enterprise digital asset finance platform. Been around for a while. Happy to answer any questions on it. I wanted to highlight our partner program. So we love working with our accounting partners. We have a Bitwave certified user program where you can earn CPE credits for certifying as a Bitwave user, and those are available on Bitwave U. Happy to follow up with anyone if you have any questions on accessing Bitwave U. But we're the largest, most robust partner program in the industry. We love hosting webinars and writing case studies and working on materials with our partners. You can be part of our partner directory on our website. And we really invest in our partners as a partnership. So anyone listening here today, if you're interested about becoming a Bitwave partner, please let us know.